Now that Stellar Blade 2, a sequel that perhaps could be the first in a series of games to continue the narrative of Eve and her compatriots, has been confirmed, we now have at least a few years of speculating, discussing, and theorizing on what we could get in the sequel. Stellar Blade was a hit on both PlayStation and PC for a number of reasons. There is an established appreciation of the combat mechanics, a love for the diverse soundtrack, and a community that have become enraptured with Eve and the other angels. Fan art, cosplay, and general love of their female form and feminine beauty are thriving online, all thanks to Kim Hyung Tae and the Shift Up team. One area of the game, Stellar Blade's story, although still appreciated by many as a brilliant one with layers of themes and character development, was delivered in a way that for some felt disconnected and sometimes even incomplete. The story was there, but due to various reasons, some completely misunderstood the narrative and story themes that Stellar Blade was pushing. Even Kim Hyung Tae, the game's director and company CEO of Shift Up, recently came out and stated that the story's delivery could have been better. Unfortunately, this was due to a number of cutscenes that likely provided more exposition, world building, and character interactions needing to be cut due to production costs and game efficiency. In the interview, Kim Hyung Tae mentions that some story threads of NPCs and even an explanation of the variety of Eve's nanosuits, specifically how and why she changes into so many of them, were also cut. However, in the same interview, he assured us that with the sequel, they would be able to address these issues, and he promises that in the next game, his team will be able to refine the story and provide a richer narrative that pushes the franchise forward. The chatter online amongst the community is hopeful at Kim Hyung Tae's promise of the story being provided to us in a more robust and complete way. So with the thought of what is to come, I've landed here with this video, a top 20 in what we want in terms of story elements, themes, and topics for Stellar Blade's sequel. I will have 4 different categories/sections of the video, grouped based on specific narrative or story elements. They are flashbacks, further explanations of current canon, basically things we learned about in Stellar Blade 1 that can be expanded in the sequel, new story threads, and the endings. Yes, I'm going to get into the endings and where I think the story can go, but those are towards the end of this top 20 list. But I promise you this list will also include some rich story information and discussion about many other things that we want to see in the sequel as well. So let's dive into it. This is the top 20 things we want to see story-wise in Stellar Blade 2. Section 1, Flashbacks. Number 20. The Final War and the War Before the Final War. The Mothersphere Doctrine's calling card, the term, "May your memories live on forever," the propaganda used to ensure Andro 8's humans return the data on their memory sticks to Mothersphere, could be used to help explain what came before Stellar Blade 1 in terms of the timeline. Flashbacks are an incredible storytelling device. We got Kyle Reese's iconic flashback of the war with the machines in T1, whole episodes of TV from the memorable Season 1 of Heroes that were delivered to us in black and white, and then flashbacks that distort our perception of time in movies such as Memento. And we got some flashbacks at the beginning of Stellar Blade when Adam saved Eve, and some minor still images of Eve and Adam coming to an agreement with one another inside the tetrapod. But any continuation of the use of flashbacks in the narrative after that fizzled out. With the in-canon existence of memory sticks, there is a unique opportunity to tell the story through what is contained on memory sticks that are still available to us at the end of Stellar Blade 1. If we move forward with the understanding that memory sticks are more than just an individual's most raw and precious memories, but instead data perceived by that specific Andro Eidos throughout their entire life. Basically, all visual, auditory, olfactory, and other sensory data that is used by Mothersphere for her to operate. Remember, she is an artificial superintelligence, an ASI. She needs two things to operate: massive amounts of power and data. My belief is that this is what the memory sticks actually are, and when memories are returned to Mothersphere, I'm using air quotes here, it is actually data being provided from the entire lifespan of an Andro Eidos so that Mothersphere can continue to make her predicted outcomes, basically her functioning as an ASI. So with that understanding, we have a very particular storytelling opportunity that is unique to the universe of Stellar Blade. Flashback scenes or memories could be shown to us via memory sticks. Memory sticks that are obtained by our heroine Eve could be given to Lily, as she is a tech expert, to reveal all types of story information about the past. There are two past events that we all want to know about: the Final War, the war that the Naytiba were a part of, and the war that came before the Final War, the war between real organic humans and the Andro Eidos. And there is at least one specific Andro Eidos human we know of that was alive during the Final War, Orkul. At the end of Stellar Blade 1, he is left just next to the core in Zion. If you get the ending where Eve and Lily return to Zion, his body frame has already been moved when Lily uses the last hypercell to power up Zion, so his memory stick was likely picked up by her. Accessing it would not only let the heroes find out more about the Final War, but also give us a more concrete explanation of how memory sticks work. Using her tech and engineering skills, Lily could definitely find a way to access Orkul's memories, basically all the data his body frame observed when he was alive, which would include the Final War. We could learn about what life was like prior to the Naytiba outbreak, the details of the Final War, Orkul's turn to become an alpha, and of course the evacuation at the orbit elevator and resulting colony extinction that Orkul experienced firsthand. And then there's the war that came before the Final War. We don't know if Orkul was part of that or if he was created by Mothersphere afterwards, so it's not a surefire bet that his memory stick would reveal this period as well. But I do have a thought of how we can learn about this time period. This will be number 9 on my list. I promise I'll revisit the war before the Final War later at number 9. So let's put a bookend on the two major wars right now and get on with the list. Number 19, Mothersphere and Raphael Marx. There are still some people who have completed the game and have not made the connection that Adam is Raphael Marx. This is stated in his ecological information, but several gamers have not read the item and gear descriptions or the ecological information of the characters and Naytiba. Raphael Marx is Adam. They are one and the same. He created Mothersphere and they continued to operate almost as mirrors of one another throughout history and into the events of Stellar Blade. It would be great to see what this looked like in the past. Being that Mothersphere operates from the colony, or via transports or ships that are sent from the colony, she is off-world, so an interaction between her and Eve in which Mothersphere tells Eve what her interactions with Raphael Marx was like is unlikely. Yes, I am aware that in the Return to Colony ending, Eve and Lily make their way up to the colony, but I do think there is going to be a reset in order to get them back down to Earth. By sending the Albatross, Mothersphere did basically invite the two angels up to meet her, but in order for the sequel to be set up properly, I don't see them confronting Mothersphere and arriving at a resolution, or sharing knowledge with one another at the start of the sequel. It would not make sense for a sequel to start with a resolution between the game's protagonist and antagonist. There will need to be more conflict that occurs first. I'll explain what I think could happen later in this top 20 list when I talk about the endings, but basically I think if this ending will be incorporated into the sequel, there will be some way of putting Eve and Lily back on Earth, with Eve having some interactions with Mothersphere, but it will not include Mothersphere telling the angel about the past. What I'm trying to convey is that Eve and Lily don't have access to Mother Sphere's knowledge about the past. Mother Sphere operates as the antagonist to Eve. The definition of an antagonist is someone constantly moving against the protagonist. Antagonists deploy obstacles and set up barriers to the protagonists of the story. Therefore, in order to learn about the past, specifically the interactions between Raphael Marx and Mother Sphere, we need a different source of information. And this is where I think the presence chamber will come into play. I believe the presence chamber is what originally housed Mother Sphere. Raphael Marx, once he became the elder and changed his name to Adam, was able to influence a lot of what we currently see in Zion due to his quote-unquote friendship with Oracle. I believe it was Adam who helped set up Oracle in the presence chamber and established his personal link. Oracle's personal link appears to be a crude version of the network. It is displayed in front of Oracle as visual map data. It gives him the location of different alphas, but it may have other abilities as well. Adam seems the likely person who set this up for Oracle, and if my thoughts on what the presence chamber was before Zion's existence are correct, then it could be an access point to uncover information about the world before Mother Sphere's reclassification of humankind. What I could see happening for the sequel is Lily setting up shop within the presence chamber. She could rewire and rework a few things in order to access the thousands of memory sticks within the presence chamber's ceiling, and perhaps even find a way to access information and data that existed within the presence chamber far back in history, to a time in which I believe Raphael Marx and Mother Sphere interacted with one another inside the presence chamber when they ran Eidos Industrial together. If the presence chamber was where Raphael Marx originally housed Mother Sphere, perhaps Mother Sphere's first iteration was an actual body frame hooked up within the presence chamber. In this case, Mother Sphere was actual hardware when she was first built. This would explain why Oracle's body frame is hooked up to wires within the presence chamber as well. Early on, the presence chamber contained a Mother Sphere that was hardwired. Mother Sphere's first iteration could have been something that looked like what we see with Oracle, a physical body frame at the center of the presence chamber. Then, after future iterations, she became an entity that is what we see in the game, something that no longer requires a physical form. Through her engineering skills, Lily could create a way to temporarily hook herself up to the same wiring within the presence chamber, perhaps by creating an interface that syncs to the AI brain of an Andro Eidos such as herself. This could take visual influences from Cerebro of the X-Men universe or something out of Ghost in the Shell. Either way, I'm sure the Shift Up devs could create something visually stunning. Giving Lily this path in a sequel would allow her tech and engineering skills to continue to blossom. It would also push her growth as a character narratively, as it was she who originally challenged both Adam's suggestions of their existence as androids while speaking at his safe house in Zion, as well as her rejecting the same notion while in Abyss Levoir after listening to Raven's Legacy. Seeing her come to terms with her existence as an Andro Eidos and being the one to continue to uncover more about the truth of this reality would be a cool character arc for her to continue to go on. Through this, Lily could be our source for uncovering the treasure trove of information about the past interactions between Mother Sphere and Raphael Marx. Section 2, next category, explanation of canon established in Stellar Blade 1. Number 18, the Cradle. If the presence chamber is what originally housed Mother Sphere, then it makes sense that the Cradle's core and the hypercells Eve inserts into it throughout the game would be what powered the ASI. But then, what were the thousands of body frame pods that cover the walls of the Cradle originally used for? It's obvious the Cradle is something that existed before the final war, with the destruction of Earth that occurred due to the colony extinction, basically wiping away all technology and resources that were on Earth. There is no way the citizens of Zion could have constructed what we see in the presence chamber, or Zion, post-colony extinction. It is too technologically advanced, so it had to have existed before the Naytiba outbreak and the final war. And if we are building upon my thoughts that the presence chamber was where Raphael Marx and Mother Sphere interacted with one another in the time period prior to Mother Sphere's reclassification of mankind, Then the question remains about the cradle and the pod bays along its walls. What were they originally used for? When we first enter the cradle, Lily asks if it is a grave, to which Adam replies that the citizens are in a dormant, sleeping state. Yes, at this point, the body frames within the cradle are providing Zion with low amounts of energy, but this doesn't seem like their original purpose. The cradle's original functionality had to involve Andro-Eidos body frames because they can be fit into each pod bay. Currently, the pod bays do have the ability to draw power from a body frame, but I think their original intent was actually the opposite of what is currently happening in Zion during the events of Stellar Blade. I believe the cradle was in essence Mother Sphere's cradle for her androids, but a devious cradle in nature. We have to consider the way Mother Sphere needs to function and what we have already seen within the presence chamber regarding memory sticks. She constantly needs data to function as an all-powerful ASI. We've seen areas for memory sticks to be inserted within the ceiling of the presence chamber. I believe these are actual memory sticks from deceased Andro-Eidos, like Adam states. Therefore, their body frames are gone. Only their memory sticks are taken and provided to Mother Sphere. But what about memory sticks of Andro-Eidos that are still alive? The cradle provided Mother Sphere with the means to have even more data provided to her through additional memory sticks. These memory sticks of still alive androids. There is only so much historical data that artificial intelligences can be fed. Raphael Marx must have realized this, and in order to help create and keep his ASI functioning, he needed to arrive at a means to give her ongoing, never-ending data. And here is where the Andro-Eidos race of androids presented the solution to this. The data that each individual Andro-Eidos living on Earth can take in over their lifespan would be immense. Imagine you are an Andro-Eidos living in society at the time prior to the war before the final war. An Andro-Eidos living on Earth at the time would have 24 hours of visual data, 7 days a week, taken in through their eyes. They would see where people went, see things at their jobs, etc. And this was just the visual data. They would also take in auditory data, olfactory data, and so on. They were a new race of beings living with organic humans. Organic human beings take in similar amounts of quote-unquote data through our senses. But this is for our own access, stored as our real organic memories. Andro-Eidos, on the other hand, have everything stored on their memory sticks. Raphael Marx and Mother Sphere knew this, and the cradle could have served two purposes, one of which was a hidden function that was meant to secretly access the information/data on the Android memory sticks. On the outside, the duo would have presented to the public that the cradle served as a place to recharge the body cells of Andro-Eidos body frames. We know body cells need to be recharged. This is what Lily tries to do for Iberus, but unsuccessfully. The cradle could have been marketed to the public as a place to recharge the body cell. But once body frames entered the cradle, Mother Sphere could access the data on their memory sticks without them knowing. This functionality of what the cradle did could have been withheld from the public. This early way of Mother Sphere absorbing data required the physical connection of a body frame to Mother Sphere's hardware, and the cradle was how this was achieved. As this was iterated on by Mother Sphere and Raphael Marx, we eventually arrive at what we see in Stellar Blade. When memories are sent to Mother Sphere in Stellar Blade, this now occurs similar to an airdrop or a wireless data sync. While in Matrix 11, Eve attempts to send these memories, data, to Mother Sphere. This process now happens in the same manner as an extremely far airdrop. As Eve motions with her hands, this is the process of sending the data to Mother Sphere. This physical movement that Eve deploys is currently the means of sending memories to Mother Sphere, and it is likely the way that all other Andro-Eidos and angels who live on the colony do so. Remember, Mother Sphere has all of her race of androids on the colony indoctrinated, following the Mother Sphere doctrine. The doctrine's core principles are to hide the truth of real organic humans from the Andro-Eidos, and to trick them into sending Mother Sphere data with a belief that sending quote-unquote memories to her is part of a spiritual practice that allows individuals to live on forever. When Taki dies in Matrix 11, she and Eve believe this is the case. Eve has not learned of the truth at this point yet. so Taki's death sees the two believing there is some spiritual process of her death, that she will float among the stars and return to be with Mother Sphere. Back in the sewers of Matrix 11, Eve believes she is sending the memories of the survivors' memory sticks in the glass container to Mother Sphere. Eve is not aware of the energy field disrupting the connection to the colony via the network caused by the Demogorgon atop the orbit elevator, so it is assumed by us, but not so by Eve, that this process fails. Okay, back to the cradle and the time prior to Stellar Blade. Once the body cell is recharged, the Andro Eidos inside could go about their life again, unaware that Mother Sphere had also just absorbed all of the data from their memory stick. Number 17. Body frames. Every human we've seen in Stellar Blade, with the exception of Adam, are part of the new human race, the Andro Eidos that Raphael Marx and Mother Sphere created. The body core item description states that Eidos Industrial Company only designed one type of body frame. Its firmware allowed the trim, or the outward appearance, its skin, facial structure, body type, etc., to look different. So it clearly was Mother Sphere who iterated upon them over time and eventually arrived at a specialized form of the Andro Eidos body frame, the Angels, members of the airborne squadron that served as extreme weaponized versions of Andro Eidos. We've therefore seen a wide array of body frames with earlier versions of the Andro Eidos, such as Oracle, all the way up to Eve's Wave 7 and even beyond, with the angels that are sent to Earth by Mother Sphere to test Eve during the Making New Memories ending. We've seen a variety of external makeups of body frames, such as with the individuals within Zion having different mechanical appendages and facial components. And we've also seen a variety to the insides of some of the angels, specifically the insides of Raven and Taki's arms and Lily's abdomen. Each of these angels seem to be made up of entirely different components and substances. Lily's abdomen looks entirely mechanical. Raven's arm seems to have a red blood-like substance mixed with components and lights that scream machine. And the internals of Taki seem the most biological, with little to no signs of anything machine-like. But Adam was clear in his exposition to Eve inside the nest that the Andro Eidos do not contain any human DNA. So what then is the red blood-like substance within Raven and Taki's insides? It does appear organic in nature, but Adam's statement about their lack of human DNA leaves us wondering what this organic-looking substance actually is. It would be great to perhaps see the process in which Andro Eidos or angels are actually made, with characters giving some exposition over a cutscene of the earlier days of Eidos Industrial creating body frames, or something more current on the colony with Mother Sphere creating her angels. We've seen something like this in BB's official Stellar Blade music video, where she walks by human-sized pods that appear to contain angels. BB looks upon them as they float within a liquid substance, and then later in the music video, the South Korean singer appears again as a representation of Mother Sphere, and touches one of the angels with life as her music video ends. This is the extent to what we've seen of this process of the creation of the angels, so I'm hoping we can get more in the next game. Number 16. Nanosuits. In the same interview I referenced earlier, Kim Hyung Tae did mention there was an explanation to why Eve and possibly the other angels wear different nanosuits, but it was cut from the game. Does it have something to do with the fact that they are considered to be weapons? Weapons that are ordained with fabulous and tricked-out nanosuits in the same way that gun owners of our real world mod and customize their weapons. This likely seems to be the case. It is referenced throughout Stellar Blade that the angels are weapons. We read this in item descriptions, and we even hear Lily make reference to this, about being jealous of Eve's advanced body frame.
Now that's a high-performance body. Jealous?
The angels are weapons that are littered with warning signs, labels, and design motifs/decals one might see on guns, explosives, and even fighter jets of today's real world. Even though it seems that Tetrastar's nanosuit designers, Galaxy Allen, RIP, and Kitsune Maria design nanosuits for all of the Andro Eidos society, so that individual androidos living in Mother Sphere's new human society can wear them, as made evident by some nanosuits being part of specific fashion lines, and terms like plug suits existing to explain outfits that are solely designed to show off a wearer's TNA. It's clear that some of the nanosuits are solely designed for the angels. What I believe is an additional reason behind the many different nanosuits that Eve and other angels can wear, besides the fact that they are considered weapons, relates to Mother Sphere's apparent hierarchy or structure of the military. If you look at the nanosuits that have Eve somewhere plastered on them, they sometimes also have the words Defense Force, to make the complete term Eve Defense Force. Some of these nanosuits are clearly uniforms. I'll get more into my thought on Eve's name when we get to number 12 of this list, but I believe the Eve Defense Force is one of the branches of Mother Sphere's military, and their specific task revolves around the defense of the colony. They police and maintain order on the colony and protect it from foreign/outside attacks. There would be a number of angels on the colony that wear these nanosuits and live out their lives protecting the colony. Eve Defense Force is also written on some of the planet diving suits, so this branch of the military also serves as the airborne squad members. It states on Stellar Blade's official website that Taki is a highly decorated soldier and leader of Wave 7, so they are clearly a military force. These two tasks, defense of the colony and their role as an airborne squad member, appear to be the two functions of the Eve Defense Force. In addition to the uniform and diving nanosuits, Eve has access to a number of other nanosuits that fall in line with what we would see in a more cyberpunk or neo-future fashion aesthetic, or straight-up swimwear and lingerie. Although my thoughts on the Eve Defense Force is technically speculation, it is based on information we see in the current game. Any speculation as to why Eve puts on the nanosuits that are based on more everyday fashion of the Andro Eidos would continue to be speculation on my part, but admittedly, even wilder speculation because any inferences I put forth would not be based on any evidence. I'm sure the cutscenes that were planned, that were unfortunately taken out of the final game, did have a great explanation for this, and I'm truly hoping that we can get some more insight into the nanosuits, specifically why Eve has so many and changes in and out of them so frequently in the sequel. Kim Hyung Tae, please tell us something. We love your designs and want them to keep coming, but giving us an in-universe explanation of the nanosuits would be much appreciated. Number 15, Memories. When we think of some of science fiction's greatest stories that have to do with implanting memories, we've seen explanations that are both really cool and unique, yet also have profound effects that influence the characters and overall narrative of those IPs. In The Matrix, when Cypher makes a deal with Agent Smith, he demands that he not remember anything about the real world after his betrayal of Morpheus and his crew, and that he wants to be reinserted into the Matrix as someone important, telling us that the machines can simply program in a life for the incubating humans to believe they live. And in 2049, the Memory Maker makes memories in her chamber to give to replicants such as Agent K. She does this with a sympathetic nature as she knows replicants have difficult lives, made to do what real humans will not. She knows replicants have nothing to look forward to, so she tries to create good, kind memories for them to be implanted with so that they can at least have loving memories to look back on. These two science fiction masterpieces are examples of how we are given both a clear explanation of how memories are created and implanted in their hosts, and also how they impact the characters of their respective narratives. Within Stellar Blade, the idea of implanting false memories for the Andro Eidos to believe has presented several questions that we would love answers to. Luther, writer of The Lost 72 Years, states that after the war before the final war, in which Mother Sphere and the androids wiped out real organic humans, Mother Sphere was able to wipe the minds of the androids and then insert false memories to make them believe they were and always have been human beings. So we know Mother Sphere can wipe the minds of her Andro Eidos, but how does this work? Can she do this at will? If so, is she constantly doing this, adjusting memories and the minds of her androids? This much omnipotence wouldn't work for story's sake, so I hope we are given an explanation of this memory-wiping event that Luther refers to. And then the question arises regarding the specific relationship and backstories certain Andro Eidos are given. When I think of this conundrum, my thoughts keep returning to the store shop owner in Zion, Lyle, and his daughter Erin. Body frames don't physically grow. So what then is the explanation of Erin remaining the age and size she is forever? Erin seems to be a teenager. In Mother Sphere's society, is she always that age? Does Mother Sphere adjust her memories? Is Erin's AI brain reset every year or so to explain away why she is not growing? Is then Lyle's AI brain also reset every year or so as well, so there is no question as to why she physically isn't growing? Or does Mother Sphere account for this and give Erin and other children in her society a new, larger body frame every year or so? Mother Sphere is an ASI. She could constantly be updating or changing the memories, and in the cases of children, she could also change their body frames unknowingly by them through a simple mind swap. This could be explained through a simple line or two of dialogue. When Mother Sphere made the decision to wipe out organic humans and insert her Andro Eidos race of androids as the new humans on Earth, she had to have at least considered how she would address these issues. So I'm looking to you, Shift Up writers. Hopefully you guys can give us something unique and satisfying. Number 14, the network. What is the extent of Mother Sphere's omnipotence? Throughout Stellar Blade, we saw what the absence of the network did to some Andro Eidos. Most notably, it made several individuals lose their faith, and it also presented a new way of life, to live without the constant presence of Mother Sphere in their AI brains. In one of the Legionnaire's memory sticks, we hear his thoughts, stating that he feels empty without Mother Sphere's presence in his mind, due to the network going down. During the time in which the network functioned, before the colony extinction, it seemed to give peace to Andro Eidos, knowing that Mother Sphere was always with them, always in every individual's mind. But Mother Sphere's absence via the disruption to the network on Earth seemed to allow people to begin to think more individually, untinged by the fingers of Mother Sphere. The disruption caused by the Demogorgon's energy field created a new way of life without Mother Sphere always present in their minds. And in the one instance where an individual, Luther, was able to access the network, he was quickly terminated after he uncovered the truth of their existence. His actions are just an extreme example of the individuality that some begin to take on once they are liberated from having Mother Sphere in their brain all the time. This leads to more independent thought, and in some cases, questioning of faith in Mother Sphere, that in turn leads to a loss of faith. Being that Luther was a history buff obsessed with uncovering the mysteries of the organic race that predated theirs, something that would run into direct conflict with the Mother Sphere doctrine, once Luther connected to the network to do some digging around, Mother Sphere ended his life. But now that the Naytiba disruption to the network is gone and Mother Sphere can now access the minds of the Andro Eidos across Earth again, can she simply terminate any Andro Eidos mind at will? It appears that Mother Sphere cannot simply turn off an AI mind, but instead needs to overload a system that the Andro Eidos is connected to. This is only an inference we can make based on what happened with Luther, giving us some rules of what can and cannot happen via Mother Sphere's regained power through her connection to the network would be helpful in the sequel. And now that she can be in the minds of her Andro Eidos again, does that mean many who lost their faith are going to flock back to their belief in their God? Good science fiction, and just good storytelling in general, always establishes the rules of its world. Having the stakes clearly defined for us in Stellar Blade's sequel with regards to the network would be essential. Additionally, understanding these rules could play into the added significance and increased importance of Lily and her tech skills. If she is to play a greater role in the tech-related realm with her digging around the network to unearth more knowledge, then she will be at risk from Mother Sphere's attacks. This could lead Lily to create a way to block Mother Sphere from further manipulating her or other Andro Eidos humans, to prevent any future memory tampering or any occurrences such as what happened with Luther to them. Establishing the rules of how the network works could further explain what sending memories to Mother Sphere also looked like. All of this would be necessary to break down at the start of the sequel. Now that Mother Sphere can once again access the network, we would need to understand what her abilities are, since she will continue to operate as the game's overall antagonist. Number 13. Mother Sphere's Protocols. Protocol. Its definition states it is an official procedure or system of rules governing an occasion or instance. Being that Mother Sphere is an ASI, her protocols are the result of the predicted outcomes, her predictions of the future. Mother Sphere's procedures and systems that are the defining component of what a protocol is are likely involved and even excessive. But because we only saw the names of protocols in Stellar Blade 1, we don't know how they are decided upon by the ASI. To us, the protocols are simply the written expression of her predictions, of her reading the future. It would be great to see what Mother Sphere's process of coming up with the protocols are, and how they are written on her angels. Could the written protocols look something like what occurred in Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise's science fiction film Minority Report? In this film, the precogs had their dream, then Tom Cruise used his Gambit-inspired gloves to manipulate the visual representation of the dream, scrubbing through it until he saw the instance of murder. A mechanism then inscribed a spherical piece of wood with a unique cut and grain, with the victim and murderer's name. This seems like it could be a similar process that Mother Sphere and her angels go through. Mother Sphere seemingly has hundreds, if not thousands, of predicted outcomes of the future, splintering and branching to arrive at wildly different outcomes, 3 of which we've seen written on her angels. Obviously, we have 2 variations of the Eve protocol, one written on Eve, which states, "Retrieve all the truth," and one written on Raven, stating, "Agency for collapse." I've made videos covering what I thought each of these protocols meant, specifically relating to the story we saw in Stellar Blade. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out the Nanosuits Explained video here and jump to the 2650 mark. And then, of course, the third instance of a written protocol is with the Easter egg seen on the Black Wave nanosuit, written as Protocol Eden, which many have theorized will be the protocol that Mother Sphere has predicted to take place in the sequel. Some believe the Eden Protocol will revolve around how Eve becomes the shepherd of the new humans and creates an Eden on Earth for them to live in. Will we get more protocols with the sequel? Most likely. Mother Sphere's functionality, specifically around her protocols, will be a great way to push the story forward, to confirm our thoughts on what the Eve protocol really was, why there were 2 different taglines, one printed on Eve and a different one printed on Raven, and what the Eden protocol and future ones we have yet to learn of actually mean. Number 12. Eve's name. The friendly shop owner in the wasteland, Digger, refers to the angel we know as Eve as a member of the Eve Airborne Squadron.
Oh yeah, Angel.
Angel, that's the unofficial name for members of the Eve Airborne Squad.
I'm Eve.
Before Eve makes her clarifying statement, Digger uses the name Eve to refer to the entire Airborne Squad, and Adam introduces our heroine as an angel. Then Digger proceeds to make this statement. So what does Digger mean here? Going back to my thoughts about military branches that Mother Sphere created, I believe the Eve Airborne Squads are part of the Eve Defense Force, again a specific branch or unit of Mother Sphere's military. Therefore, when Digger first meets our angel of the 7th Airborne Squadron, he knows her as a member of the Eve Squadron, not as an individual named Eve. After she clarifies to Digger that her name is Eve, I thought we were going to get more story explanation behind her namesake, or even an explanation on the Eve Defense Force. My initial thoughts are that Eve must hold a double meaning, both with significance as an acronym related to the Defense Force and/or Airborne Squadron, and have meaning with how it relates to her dynamics with Adam, drawing from its obvious Christian Adam and Eve influence. But because an explanation after Digger and Eve's interaction never came up again, it left us completely in the dark around any explanation regarding our heroine's name. Why is it that all other waves of angels did not have an individual from their squadron named Eve? Even the angel of Wave 2 that had the Eve protocol imprinted on her diving suit had a different name, Raven. Was our Eve originally going to have a different name that was then scrapped in order to have the name Eve during Shift Up's development time? Or is there a story explanation for this? Perhaps Mothersphere predicted that the angel carrying the Eve protocol on their nanosuit from the 7th Airborne Squadron was going to succeed in carrying out the Eve protocol, and therefore named that angel Eve. Being that we were given this line of dialogue by Digger, I really hope its story thread is not completely abandoned, as it would be quite satisfying if we were given an explanation. We could then use that information to better understand Mothersphere's protocols, naming procedures of her angels, and more backstory on the Eve Defense Force and airborne squadrons. Next section, New Directions. Number 11. Apostasy of the Andro Eidos. The memory sticks of the Andro Eidos humans that Eve came across revealed a lot about the game's narrative and prior events, but they also revealed a lot about either the continued faith or the abandonment of faith of the Andro Eidos towards Mothersphere. Contents of various memory sticks often praised Mothersphere, revealing that even in death, many still maintained their faith. But it is those who lost their faith that will soon have their final fleeting thoughts and memories vindicated by the same thought line of those in Zion in what is sure to come in the sequel. Many of the deceased Andro Eidos have lines of thoughts contained on their memory sticks that curse and denounce Mothersphere and their faith in her. Now that 3 of the main characters are aware of the deception and lies of Mothersphere, they have the opportunity to now share this information in ways that they choose. Although I like the idea of a redemption arc for Raven in the future, I don't think it would be earned if she started this path in the second game. I'm hoping Stellar Blade can be a trilogy or the start of a series of games and spin-offs for Shift Up's IP. I don't want her to turn good in the sequel because I think that would be too quick of a turn. More dynamics and interactions between her and Eve need to occur, and there are some greater story opportunities that I believe could play out if Raven did not go down the straight and narrow right away in game number 2. Raven was extremely damaged by both Mothersphere and Adam. I can see a scenario where Raven uses her knowledge of the truth to her advantage. She would proceed to use the truth to in turn hurt others she comes across. I'll get into what this is later on in this list. It'll be number 4 when I discuss Raven. But in short, I can see Raven withholding the truth or drip-feeding what is necessary to those she meets on her path in order to manipulate them and get what she needs or wants. As for the other 2 who know the truth, Eve and Lily, I can see them taking a different route. Now that Eve has returned and is considered a savior of Zion, she may be able to spread the truth with the support of the Royal Guard members Quiel and Shale, who were guarding the Lavors. Unfortunately, Rael and her side homie that guarded the presence chamber were killed by Raven, and I'm not sure if Man is still alive or not, so that leaves at least 2 that are alive for sure, Quiel and Shale, who could possibly know the truth along with Eve and Lily. But even if the duo don't have any help from others with spreading the truth, I don't see a heavily political sequel in terms of vying groups of power in the sequel's narrative. There was a story thread in Stellar Blade 1 between the Freedom Liberation Alliance and Man and his Sentinels, but it all played out through item descriptions and memory stick text. The sequel will already have a lot of story to continue to flesh out that was either incomplete or left on the cutting room floor from the first game. It will also need to continue to push the narrative forward in exciting ways that are wholly new, so a power dynamic between 2 vying parties, Eve and those that know the truth and those that want to maintain their faith in Mothersphere, doesn't seem likely due to a lack of airtime. What I can see happening instead is that there is a line or 2 of dialogue that explains to us that Eve and Lily have now spread the real truth, and now Zion as a whole is moving forward under Eve and Lily's leadership and guidance. Having the entirety of Zion apostatize their faith in Mothersphere during the sequel in unison seems like something that could help take the Andro Eidos to their next iteration of existence. No longer pawns of Mothersphere, a unified race of liberated Andro Eidos that come together under their liberating angel, Eve. Getting the entire population of Zion to this outcome, the denouncement of their faith in Mothersphere, yes, even you, Francis, would be something I want to see happen quickly at the start of the game. It could then lead to other storytelling opportunities for the sequel. How will people deal with the truth? What opportunities this opens up for them, and what new faith or belief they might now latch onto are just a few examples. Number 10. New Naytiba. Gigas was the first Naytiba that showed signs of intelligence. At first, the Andro-Eidos were able to use barriers, obstacles, and mines to stop them during the final war. Gigas was the first documented Naytiba to overcome such strategies used by the Andro-Eidos. The Democrawler, Greater Demogorgon, and Belial were Naytiba forms that also showed the ability of greater intelligence. They held onto the rage and resentment towards the Andro-Eidos. Belial pursued Eve at the base of Spire 4, and the Demogorgon pursued Mothersphere and Heaven's Royalty up the orbit elevator towards the colony. This is due to the inbred urge to kill humans, the new human Andro-Eidos, and doing whatever they could to achieve that goal, including the ability to think in new and clever ways. Naytiba were originally created in order to enact revenge on the Andro-Eidos humans that wiped out organic humans and stole the title of humanity from them. With the understanding that the Naytiba can become more intelligent to achieve this goal due to their instinctual urge to do whatever they can to kill Andro-Eidos humans, could we see some new evolved form of Naytiba that is more strategic, perhaps that can even communicate with one another? One that is less bestial, and one that is more sentient and self-aware. Oracle and Raven were technically Naytiba, but they were able to function in a more controlled manner, seemingly because they had a strong motivation, Oracle to repent for his sins as an alpha, and truly want to serve and help the citizens of Zion, and Raven to block Eve from fulfilling what Adam had laid out for her to accomplish, the angel that he chose over her. In all of these instances, the Naytiba had a strong emotional push that allowed them to, at least for moments, act with more purpose. And in addition to their ability to think, the unlimited evolutionary potential and pathways a Naytiba form can take will no doubt lead us to see some amazing new enemy designs in the future. I really hope Shift Up can collaborate with Jong Hee-cheol again. Hee-cheol is a monster designer who Kim Hyung Tae contacted to work with. Hee-cheol designed the monster from Boon Joon-ho's film, The Host. If they can lock Hee-cheol down again and work with him, it would be great to see how they can iterate on the designs of the Naytiba in order to give us some really far out there forms that are even more grotesque and alien than what we've seen so far. A common critique of the first game was with the biomes of the Wasteland and the Great Desert being too similar. Shift Up will no doubt expand upon the environments with new, varied biomes to address this critique, and in doing so will result in Naytiba that have taken on various evolutionary pathways to survive and thrive in each new biome. Wherever Naytiba are, they quickly evolve to their surroundings. This is why we see such a huge variety of them in the game. Some formed with rats and mites, others from a mix of insects, and there are some that appear more aquatic or ones that can take flight. So given all of this, their ability to think, paired with their physical forms that are a result of the environments they live in, we are set up to receive some truly unique new Naytiba forms. And this leads me to thoughts of what we can get in terms of new alphas. I would like to see a handful of new alpha Naytiba that arise to torment Eve and Lily. This could occur through some new story thread or perhaps be something that Raven does. When she reverted back to her angel form, was her alpha state technically gone from her? Eve did rip out her alpha core in the presence chamber. Does that mean Raven no longer has the ability to indoctrinate others? Was Raven only able to turn Taki into an alpha and indoctrinate her as an alpha herself? If she is unable to turn others into an alpha, then that will leave only naturally occurring alphas to be possible with the sequel. Adam and Raven were the only ones able to turn other Andro-Eidos into alphas. With Adam now gone, and if Raven is unable to access her alpha form anymore, then we will need to see alphas come about through an amalgamation of several Naytiba over time, similar to what we saw take place with the Demogorgon, or be the result of an extremely large individual Naytiba, such as Gigas. It'll be fun to see how Shift Up and potentially Jang Hee-cheol design the new alphas, and how the writers integrate them into the story with new emotional states that can counteract and create problems for the new humanity that Eve and Lily will be trying to lead. Number 9. Humans, old and new alike. After the Abyss Live War mission, Oracle states this:
However, at some point, Mother Sphere made a decision. Humanity's survival depended on a reorganization of the species. And that conflict led to war and the eventual extinction of the surviving humans.
That can't be.
The few who escaped destruction were scattered to the winds, but some managed to flee and find shelter in the ruins in Lavoir.
Keeping track of when characters are referring to real organic human beings or Andro-Eidos humans throughout Stellar Blade can be tricky due to how Mothersphere considered and reclassified humanity throughout history. The surviving humans Oracle is referring to here, the ones scattered to the winds, are the old humans, the real organic human beings. Oracle and Adam both refer to organic human beings as the surviving humans. Although a small group of surviving humans found refuge in the Lavoirs, the ones that were scattered to the winds may have found refuge elsewhere. It's hard to imagine any organic human beings able to contend with the Naytiba outbreak, let alone the colony extinction. Both of these events wiped out nearly all Andro-Eidos humans, who were stronger and faster than organic humans. So it may be a long shot that any organic humans could have survived the Naytiba outbreak and the colony extinction. But following up on this line of dialogue from Oracle could be a nice way to put some finality on the existence of organic humans. If you don't take Adam's hand in the nest, upon killing Adam, he states this.
With this, the history of humans is over. Your will, your actions, your decisions. I just hope that everyone is guided in the right direction.
However, there is no way he knows with absolute certainty that he is the actual last organic human being. Here, he is making more of a reference to his death, meaning the end of the human legacy, human DNA, because Eve chose to not fuse with him. Upon his death, he is informing Eve that his real human DNA, which is now the evolved Naytiba DNA, is gone forever. If she were to come upon new organic humans, they could be included in Eve's new Eden that she potentially will be creating in the sequel. Eve's nature of wanting to help all species, to help everyone, would be extended to organic humans as well. So presenting Eve with yet another species of humanity, the original organic humans, may be a unique way to push the narrative forward. It would present another faction for her to balance, which would now include Andro-Eidos humans, Naytiba, and this new organic human faction. But what I think is more plausible is for Eve and company to come upon other surviving Andro-Eidos humans. The colony extinction wiped out almost all life on Earth, but there were several people that survived. Adam states this.
During its prime, over 100,000 people called it home. Obviously, now there are fewer.
If you look at the world map in the core of the orbit elevator, where you fight the demo crawler, you can clearly see that Spire 4 is located in Australia. So that means that there were 100,000 Andro-Eidos humans, if not more, that survived the colony extinction, that were on the continent of Australia alone. That means there has to be a number of other survivors scattered across Earth, at least in the low millions. Perhaps they were not able to mobilize in the same way than what occurred with the creation of Zion, but based on the number of Andro-Eidos humans that did live in the city, we know there had to have at least been others that survived across the globe. One thing that many of the Stellar Blade community want to see happen in the sequels is to travel to another or all of the 3 remaining orbit elevators. We know that Spire 4 is the only one that remains operational, but traveling to them would surely unpack more information about the world, let alone give us the ability to travel to different biomes across Earth. Lily and company could also find a way to bring them back online. And there are many questions we have about them. Are they named after other influential people, or are they all named Raphael Spaceport? Are they designed similarly, filled with Karakuri and Arisa Maid type robots and lounges, but perhaps of different cultural biomes that are different from the Japanese cherry blossom room we saw in the Prestige Lounge? And were the different orbit elevators also points of evacuation that Mother Sphere summoned her androidos to during the ending moments of the final war? If we were to travel to one or all of the remaining orbit elevators, it would allow us the opportunity to come upon surviving androidos. If they were not capable of building a brand new surviving city like Zion, surviving humans would likely flock to infrastructure that is already built, meaning groups of people amassing at orbit elevators after surviving the colony extinction. This is just one scenario, a plausible means for Eve to meet more surviving androidos humans. Number 8. New party members. One of the criticisms of Stellar Blade's main protagonist is that she was viewed as dull, too stoic, and unemotional. I have several arguments against this, but I do agree Eve does present this way if you don't spend a lot of time analyzing her character and how she fits into the story. Some of the best moments that countered this view of her came about through her interactions with Lily and Adam, the two lone party members of the game. Lily and Eve's relationship, their sisterhood, love, and support of one another became a core component of the game. And although Adam was arguably using and manipulating Eve the entire time, they did have moments of dynamic character interactions, times where Eve genuinely appreciated him, moments of frustration Adam directed at the angel, and other times when Adam expressed fear over losing her. I was eager for more though, so I'd like to see the relationship with Lily as well as relationships with other new party members be developed. Before Eve and Lily enter the nest, they park the tetrapod outside, so we know it's still in play for them to use in the sequel. They could either use it as is, or perhaps it'll appear in the sequel with newly added mods and expansions via Lily's engineering skills, making it a larger ship capable of carrying a larger crew. The tetrapod could become the hub for Eve to interact with Lily and her new squad mates. There are so many opportunities for story and exposition to be presented through dialogue options with Lily and new party members in the sequel. Lily and these new party members could have a specific location they inhabit within the tetrapod, similar to what the party members of Mass Effect did on the Normandy. We have seen the inside of the tetrapod in a couple of instances during Stellar Blade, but we never got to actually inhabit it through gameplay. Giving us the opportunity to walk around inside, interact with the cockpit, the mission briefing area, and perhaps even the large turret would be great. And in terms of mission gameplay and combat, we know the Shift Up dev team can already make this happen. We got to play alongside Taki and the Providence already. If you look at the behavior of Taki during the prologue battle with the Brute, you can see that she has two specific attack moves. One that is kind of like a Berserker Rage attack, akin to something we might see Wolverine do, and then another wide sweeping sword slash. The Shift Up team has already done this on a singular scale with Taki, so they can surely do this again with several more party members. Imagine taking on a few party members, perhaps another angel of a previous wave, a sentinel, Man himself, or even a Naytiba that in similar fashion to what Oracle did, covered his hostile instincts so that he could function as a typical Androidos again. Having more party members would give us a greater story through character dialogue, perhaps even party member-specific loyalty type missions to go on, and of course the opportunity to hear some fun party banter. We got a little of this between Eve, Lily, and Adam in the first game, but it was very minor.
Is this a water bottle?
No. This is the last gift a god ever thought to give us. Oh, Bacchus.
And finally, having more party members present would help develop Eve as a character and silence those that view her as dull or boring in the first place. Number 7. Zion. If we pull back and think more high level about Zion, we have to ask ourselves, what would realistically happen with the city itself after the events of Stellar Blade? The best way to think about what Zion's future could be would be to consider it after the Making New Memories ending, the ending where Eve fuses with Adam and returns to Zion. If we move forward with this ending, Zion could be the origin point for the Eden Protocol. Creating a Garden of Eden and creation in general is what I think the central theme of Stellar Blade 2 will be. I'll get into that a little later in number 3 of this list, but being that Zion was already established as the city for the surviving Andro 8's humans, and we see the fusion form of Eve here at the end of the game, I think it makes sense for Zion to become the new Eden on Earth. Eve and Lily's main mission will be about not only saving those spread across Earth, but also about creating new life to live in Zion. To achieve the first part, saving Andro 8's humans and bringing them to Zion, I can see the city becoming a beacon for not only people to flock to, but for Eve to actively bring survivors to. This, of course, could occur on a small scale with people walking to Zion, but this needs to also occur on a larger scale, perhaps through some network of communication or transportation between the 4 orbit elevators spread across the globe, or through one of the rings of the colony. It appears in the final war, Mothersphere was able to send supplies to the Andro 8 through drop pods from the colony rings. This allowed Mothersphere to send resources and weapons to any location on Earth via rotating a colony ring, then dropping resources to various spots on the surface for her soldiers battling the Naytiba. Commandeering part of the colony or overriding its control, done so by Lily, could provide Eve's faction to either travel to or send items to places across Earth through one of the rings of the colony. This could make quick transportation to and from Zion a possibility that would allow for a greater and quicker expanse of the city itself that would help it emerge as Earth's new Eden. In addition to attracting more people to Zion, what I think will be the other main mission of Eve will be her understanding of the fused blood of the Elder Naytiba now within her, specifically the Elder's power of creation. Zion could be a bastion of technological wonder, with new citizens fleeing to the city as refugees from attacking Naytiba. The city will now be home to people of many different skill sets. We would see new engineering feats, storefronts, and more come about due to the feats of its new citizens. But these would all be industrial or technological in nature. What Eve has to offer through the Naytiba blood now fused within her would be more biologically based, something similar to what we saw within the nest. What we saw there was the result of Adam creating life. The ecological information of the Elder stated that he possessed the power of creation. This ability now within Eve presents a wealth of opportunities in which the story can go, but simply giving Eve carte blanche without any roadblocks would not create a compelling story without obstacles for our heroine to overcome. Eve's story with how it pertains to Zion could be about going on a journey to understand this power. This could be her new hero's journey, and upon completing it, then returning to Zion with an understanding of how to create life, she could do so to truly accomplish creating a Garden of Eden within Zion. Number 6. NPC's continued story arcs. What do we want to be able to do within and around Zion when we're not slashing up Naytiba or other enemies? Well, in addition to my thoughts on having the opportunity to converse with new party members, so too do we want to continue our relationships with the NPCs already established in Stellar Blade 1, with more meaningful dialogue and interactions. But we need more gravitas, and perhaps even stakes to be in play. Do you want to talk philosophy on the meaning of life? Enter Digger to fulfill that need, but let's see his philosophical nature pushed to the extreme. Do you want to be the fifth wheel in The Last Gulp or on a date night to a romantically involved couple? Well, then we only have to find Sue and Enya. But now let's see more dynamics of a romantic couple play out for Eve to witness. Do you want to catch more fish and lounge around different lakes? Then deliver or cook said fish with a world-class chef? Then we surely have to catch up with Clyde and Barry. They were arguably two NPCs that had a little more pizzazz when compared to others that I'm sure could be dialed up even more. I loved the NPCs of Stellar Blade. Some had more fleshed out stories than others, but if you spent enough time with most of them and saw their quest lines through to the end, we were rewarded with some truly touching, funny, and worthwhile cutscenes and items for Eve to experience and use. And we want to see this continue. In doing so, each NPC will not only have more story threads and expositions they offer to Eve, but will also be able to provide Eve with items specific to their speciality. Kaya, Digger, Lyle, Clyde, and yes, even you, Roxanne, can expand their storefronts and present Eve with more items to buy. Kasim can style Eve's hair in hopefully an exponentially greater number of ways, and we can maybe even see Barry prepare meals that we actually get to eat with our squad mates. Even some NPCs that didn't get full-blown cutscenes, such as Francis, the bookstore owner, or Lyle and Arin, the father-daughter duo, could have expanded roles for the sequel. Number 5. Taki's Memory Stick. While I was writing the script for this top 20 list, I came across a YouTube clip of things that were added via a recent patch, one of which is an edit to the cutscene that occurs after Eve fires the overload function of the drone at the Demogorgon. After the patch, what occurs now as Eve begins to plummet through the atmosphere to Earth's surface is this.
I defeated it, but I can't get to the core. So sorry.
I was shocked, but pleasantly surprised at this and genuinely left with a smile. By Eve pulling out Taki's memory stick, she is allowing Taki's last request to be fulfilled. Taki did ask Eve to allow her to float among the stars to space by returning her memory stick to Mother Sphere. But although I do feel this edit to the cutscene is a nice touch added by ShiftUp, it does create some story complications. After learning the truth from Orkle about being Androidos themselves and not true organic humans, Eve begins to have doubts about her faith in Mother Sphere. This is seen as she encounters a couple of fallen angels leading up to the orbit elevator after she learns the truth.
Now, I don't feel like praying.
Eve no longer wants to say, "May your memories live on forever," as she knows Mother Sphere is a created artificial intelligence, not truly her spiritual or religious god. So although I do get what she now does by taking out Taki's memory stick and releasing it in low orbit above Earth, so that Taki can be amongst the stars, I kind of think it makes more sense for her not to do this. Taki and the rest of the angels were all deceived by Mother Sphere, so I can see another more likely scenario in which Eve does not return Taki's memory stick to Mother Sphere. And if this were the case, I can see Eve and Lily doing something with the memory stick to somehow access Taki's memories, essence, or data after the events of the first game. However, now that this patch has come out, it is definitive that Taki's memory stick is gone. I don't believe Eve is sending the contents of Taki's memory stick to Mother Sphere via a data sync or transfer over the network, like how I described earlier in this list, but this is more of a symbolic gesture by Eve. At this moment, Eve is in space, quote-unquote, among the stars, so she takes out Taki's memory stick and releases it, as per her sister's request when she was dying in her arms in Matrix 11. So the contents of the memory stick are gone. They have burned up in the atmosphere, and Taki's data and memories are now inaccessible. However, before I was aware of this patch, I did have thoughts about Lily somehow being able to access what is on Taki's memory stick in the sequel. What I would have liked to see happen is have the memory stick come into play later on in the story with regards to something that only Taki was aware of. Being that Taki was the 7th Airborne Squad's leader, she perhaps was privy to information or even had a direct conversation with Mother Sphere about something of importance before their dive to Earth, something that could be used against Mother Sphere later on in either the second game or later. This information could have been accessed by Lily, then shared with Eve, perhaps in a later assault against Mother Sphere. It could have been information that was on Taki's memory stick that would have allowed Eve to exploit the ASI. I'm a bit bummed Taki's memory stick is now off the chessboard of pieces that can be used in the sequel, but I do get why ShiftUp chose to add this to the cutscene, as it is a nice way to wrap up the loose end of Taki's memory stick. Number 4. Raven's continued arc. I've touched a bit about Raven already in this top 20, but I'd like to go into a bit of detail about what I think could be a good path forward for the fallen angel. I do see her eventual story arc coming to completion through one or a series of acts of redemption. This doesn't need to look like Raven and Eve becoming buddy-buddy, like what we saw transpire between 117 and the Arbiter, but I do believe there will be an understanding between the two angels, either out of earned mutual respect or agreement to overcome their more common enemy, Mother Sphere. However, I believe this is further down the road after Stellar Blade 2. I can only see a redemption arc truly being earned by Raven until after more time and events have passed. Events that need to take place in Stellar Blade 2, so that we can spend more time with the fallen angel and see her character continue to progress before arriving at redemption. What I can see happening is Raven continuing down her current path, a path that is bent on anger towards Mother Sphere, resentment of not being chosen by Adam, and jealousy of Eve. Considering the state of Raven's body frame, her only weapon she has to use is the knowledge of the truth. She has no arms and no exospine to physically fight. Her mind and awareness of the truth now need to be her bargaining chip to get what she wants. And considering the norm of the wasteland and great desert, that scrappers roam the lands to find items of worth to eventually trade with those in Zion, it seems that the likely next story beat to befall on Raven will be that she is encountered and picked up by scrappers. Raven has been manipulated not only by Mother Sphere but also by Adam. Through experiencing this firsthand, she would know how to do this to others. Whoever picks her up, whether they still be believers in Mother Sphere or if they are apostates themselves, Raven would easily be able to use their faith, or lack thereof, to bend them to her will. Raven needs 2 new arms and a new exospine. Based on Adam's initial interactions with Eve, we know that collecting exospine material is a thing that scrappers do.
Adam,
Yeah,
about yesterday. Thank you for saving me.
it's nothing really. Though I have used up almost all of the exospine materials that I collected over the years.
Oh,
It is very plausible that whoever encounters Raven will have exospine material. Raven could use her knowledge of the truth to trick those that encounter her into believing something that reveals her as godlike or prophetic in her own right. Once repaired and given a new exospine and upgrades to her body frame, and or entirely new mechanical arms, she could continue to trick and manipulate those in her new orbit. They would become zealots of this new Raven-centric sect. Raven's motivations are to strike back at Eve and Mother Sphere, and to accomplish this, she would have to gather a faction that is powerful enough to oppose them. Gameplay-wise, this would create another group of enemies for Eve to battle. This group would be fanatical in reverence of their leader Raven, and would create an entirely new dynamic when Eve battles them. Naytiba battles were typically always done in a one-on-one fashion. They were never able to coordinate with one another to strike at Eve in a tactical or planned way, but with a faction of Raven-led Andro-Eidos that serve as a new enemy faction within the game, Eve would be presented with more challenging battles in terms of strategy and coordination used against her. Eve is easily able to overpower individual Andro-Eidos humans, but what about large groups of them that can lay out traps and other strategic attacks? We saw Eve get outsmarted by only 3 individuals in the alleyways of Zion, so if she is presented with larger groups to fight off in the sequel, this will lead to some truly challenging battles that would be a completely new experience. Raven's continued arc of the sequel could culminate in another showdown with Eve, topped off with Raven realizing something about herself, either assisted by Eve or entirely independent of her, but it would be something related to her starting her path of redemption. Perhaps this would be related to viewing her commonalities with Eve in a new light. In Stellar Blade 1, Raven is aware of the similarities she has with Eve. She knows that she and Eve are just pawns of Mother Sphere, but her rage towards Mother Sphere and blind worship of Adam push her down a path of instilling a similar rage towards Eve. During the events of the first game, Raven is not able to rationally detach from what was done to her by Mother Sphere and Adam, and she unreasonably directs her hatred of them to Eve. Raven may somehow learn to accept Eve and detach from her resentment of her, realizing that it was the individuals she falsely worshipped for so many years, Mother Sphere and Adam, who were the ones that harmed her. Or perhaps Raven remembers the sisterhood she had with her 2nd Airborne squad mates. She may come upon the legacies she recorded after her initial dive to Earth. She could hear herself speak again to her comrades, Danis and Ripley, then remember the humanity she shared with them, which in turn would then unlock her ability to start her path of redemption. Maybe by the end of the sequel, we would see Raven even aligning with Eve, as she sees it as the most plausible way to bring down Mothersphere, and that would then take us into Game 3 of what we could only hope as the start of her triumphant redemption arc. Number 3. The theme. Kim Hyung Tae has stated several times his main inspiration for the game was the taxi driver strike in South Korea. Autonomous driving taxis spurred him to think up the idea, the question, what if all of humanity was replaced by androids? This then led to the story being fleshed out and the development of the main theme, centered around determining what it means to be human. What does it mean to have humanity? Who can have humanity? What does it actually even mean to be human? Is it more about the biology, the blood that the Humanity Liberation Front of the Lavoirs believed made people human? Or is it more based on one's actions, actions that can be considered humane, kind, and full of humanity? These themes and questions could be seen throughout the campaign as Eve came to terms with the truth of her existence as an android. This truth initially troubled her and was problematic, but by the game's end, what actually mattered to her and the citizens of Zion were her actions. She was an android, but through the interactions she had with others in Zion, her caring empathy and her overall will to help others was what actually proved how humane and human she was. And Eve's arrival at this realization that she was human saw the completion of her story arc for the first game. In the sequel, she will need to go on another hero's journey, and her arc will need to aim at answering and completing another series of questions, revolving around the second game's core theme, what I believe will center around the idea of creation. If the Eden Protocol, as seen on the Black Wave nanosuit, will be a focal point, then Eve is going to need to fill her Garden of Eden during the sequel. At the end of Stellar Blade 1, there were two outcomes regarding Eve's body frame and her identity. In Return to Colony ending, she remained an individual with an airborne squad body frame, a hyper-advanced Andro Eidos human. In Making New Memories ending, Eve contains Adam's blood, his Naytiba DNA within her, which gives her his abilities, specifically the power of creation. I believe Shift Up will honor the two different endings and give us the ability to choose a starting point for the prologue of the sequel. In it, we choose where Eve starts based on the endings of the first game, either in the Albatross on her way to the colony or in Zion, then complete a short prologue. Then, after playing out one of the two unique prologues, we will then arrive at the same starting point for the game proper to begin. I'll get more into the details this in my top 2 items of this list, but I believe after the prologue, whatever choice we made in Stellar Blade 1, Eve will arrive at being in her fusion form to start the game. This will better allow the theme of creation to be explored, and we will answer this question through Eve's new hero's journey. Eve will need to learn to use the power of creation that is in her Naytiba blood. Adam had a brilliant mind. He became the Elder during the Naytiba outbreak, and by the time we see what he has created in the nest, it has been at least 72 years later, after he became the Elder. This amount of time presented him with a prolonged period to learn to use his power to create life. It may not take Eve this long herself to understand these new abilities, but I believe a good portion of Stellar Blade 2 will focus on her spending some time learning to use her Elder Naytiba blood to create life. And to counteract her, to move against our heroine, will be Mothersphere and Raven. Both will be creating life in their own way. If my thoughts on Raven are correct, as I stated earlier in this list, she will be creating her own faction, potentially full of religious zealots that follow her. And Mothersphere will continue creating AI life of her own within the colony. New waves of angels, and perhaps wholly new and different creations, could be sent to Earth to antagonize Eve. And finally, the backdrop of this conflict will continue to be the Naytiba that inhabit Earth. As with all viruses or infectious substances, the Naytiba contamination across Earth will likely evolve to become more powerful and potent. We could see the Naytiba take on new physical forms, continue to evolve in unforeseen ways, perhaps even essentially creating life of their own. The orbit elevator became a cesspool of contamination, and we saw just how powerful the biomaterial within Spire 4 became. It would be incredible to see what the Naytiba contamination continues to do across Earth's surface. This backdrop of Naytiba spiraling out of control and creation in its own obscene and grotesque way would appropriately set the stage for the themes of the sequel. Final section, the endings. Number 2, Return to Colony. Okay, we're finally here. I'm going to give a rundown of what I think we may get in terms of the 2 primary endings. Yes, I understand there are technically 3 endings, but I'm not going to go into the ending where Lily was dead. I want her in the sequel, so I'm not going to even touch on that ending. And as mentioned in my previous number 3 on this list, I do believe Shift Up will honor the 2 endings and give credence to both, allowing them each to live on and be carried into the sequel. Many of us in the fan community favor a particular ending, so I think Shift Up wants to avoid choosing one ending over the other, and I do believe they can design the sequel through 2 different but short prologues to allow us to technically have the option to carry forward from either of the endings in Stellar Blade 1 in a very fun and unique way. Let me explain. I understand that game development is hard, so creating 2 different prologues to play through may be impractical. Not to mention, even after all that development time, one may in fact never even be experienced by gamers depending on which one is chosen. But the separate prologues could be very short, and giving us this option would make the game truly special, add to replayability, and honor the 2 different endings from Stellar Blade 1 by giving them each the opportunity to exist. And then after each respective prologue, Eve would then end up at the same place, and the game could begin moving forward with one narrative. For the theme of the sequel, what it means to create life to be present, Eve needs to have Adam's blood absorbed and fused within her body frame. There are currently no ways for Andro 8's body frames to create life. They do have sex, as made evident by androids having reproductive organs, which within their culture seem to be referred to as plugs, a la the Plastic Hearts book series in which the 2 individuals talk about licking the plug. But having sex with one another does not result in sharing of genetic makeup from a sperm and an egg. Furthermore, Adam points out in the nest that procreation by an Andro 8 is impossible because they contain no human DNA.
Even if all the Naytibas disappear, it's impossible for your kind to succeed the human race. After all, you were created entirely from scratch, with no human DNA at all.
But in her fusion form, Eve has the ability to create life via Adam's elder Naytiba blood, and only through this will we be able to properly explore what I believe the theme of the sequel will be. With the Return to Colony ending, because Adam is dead, this seems impossible, but there is a way for this to happen. Wave 7's original briefing when coming to Earth was the capture or elimination of the Elder. I believe Mother Sphere predicted that Eve would make it to the nest, but she didn't know how Eve would deal with the Elder. She didn't know if Eve would capture him or eliminate him. What Mother Sphere wants is Adam's blood. This is just a theory of mine, but I believe Mother Sphere knows the importance of the Elder Naytiba blood running through his body. After Wave 1 of the Angels destroyed Abyss Levoir and the Naytiba outbreak occurred, the final war became an event that took Mother Sphere by surprise. This was probably the first and only time she was thrown off guard. She and her android race were defeated by the Naytiba, and in the war's aftermath she reflected on how to never let this happen again. She studied the Naytiba by taking all of the data from the Levoirs and determined that Adam's blood was the key to pushing her Andro 8 humans forward, the key to arriving at a satisfied iteration of them. Mother Sphere operates to always serve the future of mankind. At the end of Stellar Blade 1, her version of mankind is made up of the Andro 8. To her, any species can hold the title of mankind. It appears that they simply need to believe they are human and carry on living as humans, to have what would be considered a human way of life. This is exactly what we see her Andro 8 humans doing after her reclassification of mankind. when she purged all real organic human beings from Earth, aka organic human genocide. She is willing to do this again and again as long as humanity, those holding its title, are iterated upon and improved. After the final war, with the defeat of her Andro 8os humans at the hands of the Naytiba, she realizes she needs to iterate on the Andro 8os. They are now inferior to Naytiba, and if she can iterate upon them, her current Andro 8os would become obsolete. Her pathway to this starts with creating the angels, who are advanced versions of Andro 8os, but this is not her end goal. Her true end goal with the angels is the capture or elimination of Adam, because he holds the Naytiba blood that will provide her with the means to iterate once again on humanity. I don't believe she is aware of the same conclusion that Adam made regarding fusion, but she knows the Elder's blood is the key to iterating. She wants it to study and be available for her to use in her attempts to upgrade her Andro 8os humans. Now going back to the return to colony ending. Adam is dead. However, the answer of how Mother Sphere will obtain his blood lies in Eve's blood edge. Besides being a blade to kill Naytiba, the blood edge possesses the ability to absorb Naytiba blood and convert it into beta energy. Although Eve's beta skills are incredible attack moves, I believe Mother Sphere's true intentions in creating the beta skills and blood edge for Eve to use are so that Eve can be the one to absorb the Elder's blood into her blade if she ends up eliminating him. Upon the Elder's defeat, his elimination that was one of the original directives of Wave 7 at the start of Stellar Blade, Eve would be provided a transport in order to return to the colony. Mother Sphere views the angels as weapons that are disposable, and in the return to colony ending, being that Eve is not a fused/upgraded form that Mother Sphere has been searching for, she would view Eve as disposable. Mother Sphere only wants the blood edge because it contains the Elder's blood. While Eve and Lily make the trip up to the colony in the Albatross, thinking they are going to get answers from Mother Sphere, they are unaware that the ASI is actually setting a trap for them. I don't want to speculate too much on what I think the details of the colony and their arrival could be, but there are a couple of things I do believe need to happen. The blood edge is in Eve's head/hair. Mother Sphere can't simply take it from her. Mother Sphere needs to deploy deception or force to take it. Upon entering the colony, through either a villainous monologue from Mother Sphere and or some other type of exposition expressed to Eve and Lily, they will quickly realize the importance of the blood edge and the Elder's blood within it. Some type of conflict could occur, paired with the blood within her blade somehow being fused to Eve. This could occur through some power within the blood, perhaps Adam's last will that he deployed within the nest to make it inevitably fuse to Eve even if he died. Or something more practical, like Lily being able to use her engineering skills to program a body frame pod, similar to what Iberus lies in, to transfuse the blood from Eve's blade to her body frame. We could speculate forever on how this occurs, but Eve would be fused with the Elder Naytiba blood at some point on the colony, and then we get the opportunity to slice up a new wave of angels. However, Mother Sphere's power would be too much. She would need to eventually overpower Eve and Lily. Even in Eve's new upgraded form, Mother Sphere could throw more and more at her, and use what is available on the colony to overwhelm Eve. A retreat would be in order. Lily could reprogram and commandeer the Albatross to fly it on her own. Eve and Lily would realize their only escape is back to Earth, so they could fly back to Zion, ending the prologue. There would have to be repercussions on the colony. Perhaps there is a reckoning for either Mother Sphere by Heaven's royalty or vice versa. Heaven's royalty would have just witnessed two angels being attacked by Mother Sphere and likely would not be able to connect the dots due to Mother Sphere's control over the colony citizens. The society on the colony and either its collapse or continued indoctrination by Mother Sphere could continue to be a story thread throughout the sequel. The people living on the colony, Heaven's royalty, will also serve as another group of people that Eve will eventually come to save, but I believe that could be something held off on until the third potential game. Now back on Earth, with the Elder Naytiba's blood within her, Eve will have access to the ability to create life, and she can begin her new hero's journey for the sequel. Number 1. Making new memories. being that I would like Eve to have access to her fusion form, specifically the elder Naytiba blood within her, at the start of the sequel, there is not much that needs to occur within the prologue of Stellar Blade 2 if we choose continuing the story from the Making New Memories endings of Stellar Blade 1. Eve has been set up to become the shepherd of the new humans and guide them into the future, and because Eve now carries the blood of Adam in her body frame, has had the discussion with Mothersphere outside the nest about this new form of life, and been tested by Mothersphere with her new wave of angels, she and Lily are aware of Mothersphere's view of her in this new fusion form. That Eve's existence as the next iterated step in humanity appeased Mothersphere, and she deems the Eve protocol complete. Mothersphere now looks upon Eve with her ability to create life as the means to complete the Eden protocol. However, there are some questions and wants that I have revolving around this new protocol and the upgraded fusion form of Eve. Unlike the Eve protocol, I do want there to be a proper explanation of what the Eden protocol is. There was simply too much speculation left to do with regards to the Eve protocol, so I would like Shift Up to provide us with something that clearly lays out Mothersphere's next protocols. And with regards to Eve's new form, I would like some rules to be established at the start of the sequel. At the same time, I do not want Eve to be all-powerful at the start. It would not be earned to see Eve attempting to create life right away, but if she does, I want her to fail at it at first. I do not want to see something similar to what we saw in the sequel trilogy with Rey. Rey as a character was a failure because she was all-powerful and too capable in Episode 7. Leaving her little room to properly grow in her understanding and use of the Force. I therefore want Eve to fail in this new form at first a lot, and along her journey she will learn more about her powers of creation, resulting in earned character growth and understanding of these new abilities. Some questions I'd like Eve to discover the answers to along her journey include: what are the details of the multiple identities within Eve? Is Adam's identity living within Eve? Or is it just his essence and blood? What are the powers of the Elder that involve creation? Within the nest, we saw plant matter, animals, and Naytiba that all seem to be the result of his power of creating life. And although I don't think Shift Up will go the route of giving Andro Eidos the power to create life through sexual reproduction between two partners, perhaps they could explore this at least a little bit. For now, Eve, in her fusion form, has this power alone. Is there a place in the Stellar Blade universe for reproduction in a more traditional sense between two biological partners to work its way back into a society made up of only Andro Eidos humans? Again, probably unlikely, but with some creative writing, possibly revolving around Eve and Lily finding real organic humans, this could become part of the sequel. For this prologue to come to an end, there needs to be a new problem or conflict that presents itself so that the main story of the sequel can commence. That problem could perhaps be that Eve learns of the Eden Protocol via a message from Mothersphere, or she learns of her ability to create life, albeit unsuccessfully at this point, and tries to seek out organic humans, the ones that by Orko's words were scattered to the winds, to help understand biological creation. Or Raven could be presented into the story, or Eve begins making contact with individuals present at the other orbit elevators. These are simply a few ideas that could serve as a way to continue onward from the amazing endings we got from Kim Hyung Tae's beautiful Stellar Blade. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my top 20 story-related items list of what we want to see in the sequel, or anything else Stellar Blade related. I'll jump down into the comments to keep up the discussion with you all there. See you on the next one, have a good one, and may your memories live on forever.